Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Thank you all for joining us from the East and the West. Today is our Try and Just Chat, the October session. The topic for discussion today is the pillars of leadership. And I'm so excited because I have so many questions for all these panelists who come with different perspectives, different experiences in multiple fields and industries. So I am excited myself. I have my chai with me and of course water, and I hope the panelists have too, and I hope you have your chai and you are relaxed. We have received your questions. There you go, Valerie. We've received your questions and we have noted them. We are going to incorporate that into the moderate while I do moderate the session, and then you're also welcome to add or ask more questions on the chat, and we'll make sure the questions get to the panelists. Leadership, oh my gosh, it's such a complex word, complicated, but a beautiful word in itself for many good things to happen. So before we go into the session, I'll give you a brief agenda of how it's going to be. I'm going to make a brief introduction of all the panelists today, and then general questions to all of them, and we go into deep dive down about what is leadership, who calls each other a leader, and can it be self-acclaimed? So all these questions that you have in mind, please put it down on chat and just listen to us today. Sit back and relax, and thank you again for joining us. We are into our 5th year of Chai and Just Chat. These are monthly sessions. Visit our website. Thanks to Vendorship for sponsoring us every month, and again visit our website www.chaiandjustchat.com for our previous recorded sessions. Thank you. So I'm going to introduce Valerie. Valerie and I are in a board in Atlanta, which is called the Compassionate Atlanta. So Valerie and I are forced in a positive way to speak about compassion every month because the board meets every month, and we talk about how have we been compassionate the past 2 weeks, or how are we planning to be compassionate the next 2 weeks. So Valerie is an eco womanist. So Valerie, as I mentioned earlier, I don't know exactly what it means, but you have to. I'm excited that you're going to tell us what it means. You're also a stakeholder engagement specialist and a marketing consultant. And you are the co-visionary and founder of the Eco Womanist Institute, along with Veronica Kyle. And what it does is it inspires and empowers Black women and eco-spiritual opportunities to embrace ancestral and otherwise tribal connections to healing through nature. Oh my gosh, that's awesome. Networking and making relevant accomplishments of Black women in environmental discourse. So Valerie, this is the first time I'm hearing a leadership through healing through tribal, ancestral, and nature. Oh my gosh, they just get along so well, right? So thank you. This is sort of new for me, and I'm going to learn, and I'm sure those listening also are going to learn. You're also the director of New Georgia Project Black and Green Agenda Environmental Justice Campaign, and you were also a Chicago cohort climate reality leader from 2013, right? So Valerie, you've engaged diverse stakeholders in sustainability initiatives. So all the sustainability questions today come to you, Valerie, right? And then you are also the CEO and founder of Hill Rawls Marketing Consultancy, and you provide marketing communication, strategic planning, project management, B2B, B2C, and education, telecom, and retail industries. So kudos to you, Valerie. Keep the smile. And we just learned, just as we started talking, that we used to work for a county commissioner at different points in life, but so it's awesome that we worked in a political arena, and we just came to know we were in the same office in the same floor probably. So thank you, Valerie, for joining us. Next is we have Linnea Miller, who is the founder and president of Long Table LLC. Linnea, please forgive me if I'm pronouncing the name wrong, but please do correct me if it is to the correct one. So Linnea is also the current sitting city council member for Suwannee City. So she is in the public arena, but what she does with Long Table is builds healthy individuals and high performance teams who achieve greater alignment, expanded capacity, and enhanced performance. So she's also a certified 5 Voices and 100X leadership coach and speaker. She draws from her experience in teaching along with years of public service in local government to facilitate engagement and transformational leadership. There you go. So we're going to talk about transformational leadership, Linnea. Thank you. And I remember many years ago, this boss of mine, he said, "You do everything so different. You are a transformational leader." So I never understood what it was till he exactly explained it to me then. But then you've also served businesses, nonprofits, government, and Fortune 100 organizations, Linnea. And of course, connecting people to people and people to their place is a passion for you. So thank you. You've been serving in the City Council since 2014, and congratulations. You are also running for elections now, and since you don't have an opponent, even otherwise you would have won. So congratulations. Continue to continue to do great. Next we have Sonia Pardesi. Sonia, so nice to speak with you. You are joining us all the way from Bangalore, India. Bangalore is second home to me. I did my medical school in Tumkur, so thank you. I just feel connected to anyone in Bangalore. So you are a well-established image consultant and founder of Savoy Fair Image Consulting, a Bangalore-based image consulting firm. You are a postgraduate in mass communication, and you began your career as a media professional at leading media house, and then ventured into media relations. Your constant interaction with people from all walks of life as media relations professional triggered your desire to help infuse the confidence. See, I'm looking for all the pillars, and they all start with C, guys. Just a hint for all the listeners. The pillars start with C. So you make sure you bring the confidence in those who are leading the team or in corporate sector. You took the decision to groom talented professionals and bring out the best in them. That's itself in a leader in you, right, Sonia? So through high efficiency image consulting program modules. So, and just FYI, our team went through the session with Sonia, and believe me, our team just changed the dressing, the way we looked, even on camera, right? Virtual meetings, our professional virtual meetings. Go ahead, Sonia.
Thank you so much. I'm so happy to hear that. It was absolutely my pleasure. And thank you so much for having me over. It's such a privilege to be sharing space with such accomplished people. And really, it's truly an honor. So thank you so much.
Thank you for taking your time. I know it's late evening. I'll make sure we finish it in the next couple of hours. Shekhar Vijayan. Oh my gosh, Shekhar, thank you so much. It was so good to see Shekhar in person 2 years ago before the COVID hit. I was in India, and I was doing a Time Just chat over there, Valerie, and Shekhar attended the session, and I've been following, and it's like you follow people on social media after that, they made some impact, and similarly he followed me, I'm following him on social media. We see what each one is doing. I mean, I listened to his video. He's an entertainer, he's a host, a presenter, a motivational speaker, he's a stand-up comedian and a writer too, right? So he had published his book Dare to Dream. So leaders do that. So, and also Shekhar, you also have performed in India and internationally, Australia and London as well. You have performed at corporate events, sporting events, book launches, product launches, and I think humor has to be a part of anything serious that goes on in this world, right? And that's what it's a coping mechanism. Maybe I'll learn from you more, Shekhar. I've always coped with just putting out a humorous joke out there, though there's hurt inside, right? But Shekhar, I don't want to tell this story right now. As a fitness coach, how did you change? But I want you to say it in a few seconds. Please do it, because I want to hear the impact from you. Tell me, I was going to read this part about you. Can you tell us, how did you lose? How did your waistline size go from 46 inches to 32 inches?
So I made my body my best friend. And, I also realized that, we are living in a world where we're competing with each other. We don't need to do that at all. If you want to be the best version of yourself every single day, every single moment, every single second, it becomes very simple. And you're also looking out for being the best version. So when you try to be the best version, you try to make it very simple. And I did some very simple things which not a lot of people don't attempt. Like, for example, walking up and down the stairs. So, during this lockdown, you cannot step out, especially in India. So I stay in the 6th floor. I go up and down the stairs 45 minutes in the morning, 45 minutes in the evening. And that smell of sweat, it gives me a big high, when you're on your own. And actually there is no, because you're walking up and down the stairs. So hard work somewhere is a great metaphor for life, I believe.
Very nice.
I also do a plank every half an hour. I'm very stubborn in that nature. So I'm a chef's nightmare. because if I go to a hotel, I am very particular about what goes into my body. Uh, my dog has been my inspiration, of course. I have a
Sunshine?
dog. Yeah, Sunshine.
Very
Sunshine
nice.
is a golden retriever. She's got the most beautiful eyes in the world. We have a very interesting relationship, which my wife has not been able to figure out. We are in some platonic love relationship, but that's more to it. But then, yeah, so my dog has been my inspiration, and like I said earlier, I think I want to be the best version of myself every day. So
Very
when you're trying to
nice.
be the best version, you can be limitless, I believe, and I think
Awesome.
that truly is leadership.
Awesome.
I
Shaker
believe.
and I think I'm going to ask you to be my mentor in the weight reduction aspect. I've been living unhealthy lifestyle the past few months, but I'm going to follow you up on that one. Yeah. So thank you, Shaker. I still need to hear your story as I come to other questions later on what was that turning point that you realized I need to wake up. So I'm gonna come back to that story soon. Yeah. Okay. So Viplav Fauzdar, thank you so much for joining us. Viplav is an IIT grad with a degree in chemical engineering, MS in computer science, and MBA. His 24 years in technology as software engineer and a lead in projects, etc. His interests include traveling and immersing in different cultures up close, especially their music and cuisine, politics, history, and all around general awareness of what's going on in the world. And lately, he's been getting into golf during the pandemic. So, Viplav, you have something unique that I don't know if anyone else of us has. Looks like Viplav Fauzdar is the only name in the world. There's no other Viplav Fauzdar. Isn't that cute?
That's awesome.
Yeah, I know, because I look up my name all the time and I see like these three. There's one in there's somewhere in an African region and somewhere in Mid East. So I'm like, yeah, maybe there are 3, 4 Nazeera Dawoods, but Viplav
What does it
Fauzdar.
mean, Viplav? Can you tell us what your name means?
Viplav in ancient Sanskrit means revolution.
Very
Oh,
good.
so yeah, blame my dad. Trust me, I still blame my dad. I'm like, couldn't you just pick up a simple name like John Doe or something?
No, this is unique.
It was a liability as a kid, right? I come introduce myself. Oh, are you going to start a revolution? Well, I wasn't planning to. Now I have to.
I hear you, Viplav. I blame my dad for my name too.
Linnea, it's a cute name. And Viplav, congratulations on being the only person in the world, Viplav Fauzdar. So, with that said, I want to go into general questions to ask each one of you. Like I said, there are no right or wrong questions or answers. We want you to tell us more about your own testimonials, your own perspectives, your experiences, and I'll also be making sure that I note down the questions that are being asked at the chat on the chat. Yes. So, Linnea, if you had to give every human being one quality, what would it be and why? And these are general questions.
Wow, okay. Man, you know, man, well, start with me with a question I haven't really thought about because there's and a little bit about my personality is I'm a person who wants to give everyone everything, right? Like I'm give everybody all the qualities, but I would say, man, one quality would be really being able. I want to lead with belonging, like really being able to experience as a person a sense of belonging with the people that are in your world and just with the people that are even outside of maybe the circles that you are, and just with a perspective, I guess, of valuing that belonging for others and being a champion of belonging. I guess that would stand out to me if I'm just kind of coming off the top of my head. But
No, that's fine, and that's what we want you to. We don't want you to think
Yeah.
over. You all already know the answer, so this is
Yeah.
perfect. Belonging is a perfect word. And so, Sonia, what is one thing that your culture has taught you and you've never questioned it?
I guess I would say a lot of things, but one thing my culture has taught me is, I would say more than my culture, I would say my upbringing is to be generous. To be generous to people, and generosity is not only in terms of material things, it's also when it comes to love, affection, being a giver. And that is something I have learned right from childhood from my parents, who really instilled in me the fact that we largely live in a very unkind world, and it's so important to be generous and kind with people around you. And probably that's one of the reasons why I chose my profession.
Very nice. Very
Right.
nice. Yeah. Awesome. Sounds great. And much needed as well in this day and age. So Valerie, what is one thing you wish your parents had said to you growing up?
Some people say no. The one thing that I wish that my parents would have told, oh my gosh, they imparted so much good stuff. Wow, I was told that the world was a tiger, to grab it by the tail and throw it over in the corner and go do what you have to do. So, maybe a little bit more self-care.
Okay.
I think I have a tendency, my self-care is similar to yours. I'm on a 4-floor walk-up, but I will burn the midnight oil, the candle on both ends to ensure that I do what is required to meet the needs of others. So I think maybe golfing a little bit more and spending a little bit more time just self-care beyond just reading books and thinking just because I'm stationary. That's my self-care at the moment.
I don't know if it is cultural, because even growing up, we were told to take care of others. If we talked about self-care, it was selfish. Like, you're just thinking about yourself.
Right.
So, but times have changed, and good. So, Viplav, the question is for you next. When were you the happiest?
Oh, geez, that's deep.
You could say now.
Now, and
when was I the happiest? Like one single moment in time?
Moment, a period of time, might be an event or graduation.
I'd have to go back to my undergrad.
Okay.
Those 4 years of, so I don't know how many of you've seen, especially folks in India, Three Idiots, the movie.
Yes.
That's BS.
Okay.
So my friends who never lived in a hostel in an IIT in India, they're like, "Oh my God, the movie's so awesome." I'm like, "That's nothing." The craziness that goes on in an IIT hostel is nothing that's portrayed in that movie. Okay, so those 4 years were bliss. Yes, absolutely.
Was it so are you is that the innocence? There was no parental control. You all just felt the freedom. Is that the reason?
Absolutely, the crazy stuff.
Getting to know new friends, new people.
I cannot say it.
The stories you can't speak here.
Okay, that's it.
That's for a different podcast.
Think of the worst, like American Pie multiplied by like 5 times.
Awesome. Okay, sounds good. Now we know what happens in IIT undergrad. Now let's go to Shekhar. Shekhar, what is your greatest fear, and how do you manage fear in general?
So my greatest fear is losing my loved ones. So that's something which I'm sure the whole world is dealing with, because we have seen how the last 1.5 years to 2 years has been because of the pandemic, right? It's something which at times you don't have any control on initially, but now over a period of time you realize because of the pandemic there are certain precautions you can keep, but then human life is so transitory, I would say, that you cannot prepare yourself anything. So that's when I realized that you make each day and each moment count, because you don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. But that's something I fear. I don't say I'm scared of it. I'm not scared of anything actually, but I fear losing my loved ones, and I think the only way to avoid that or make sure that doesn't happen in the forefront is making each moment count, talking to them, expressing yourself, being your most honest, being your most vulnerable self, and looking at your weaknesses as well as your strengths in the eye. I think that for me symbolizes what life is about.
And Shekhar, that's what I love about you, because you live in the moment and you inspire others to live in the moment. And I've been trying to do that the past few years. And I think as you graduate from your own self and evolve to a different perspective, you realize that it's the moments. Once the moments are lost, it's hard to get back. So and that's what I'm conveying to friends and families as well. Like, live in the moment, live today, be happy, be smiling, do what you want to do, what you've always wanted to do, and you're a living example of that. So thank you, Shekhar, for inspiring. Okay, now the question for all the panelists. Yeah, either you can go thumbs up or thumbs down. Do you think leaders are born or made?
I think they're made.
Made.
Yeah.
I agree. They are made.
Made.
I would say it depends on how you define leader.
Okay.
Because there are a lot of leaders. There are certain people, I think, that are born with certain qualities that kind of positional leadership rewards them for those things, right?
Okay.
They may be risk takers. They may be people who will just jump in and share their opinion. They may be continuing learners, right? Like certain people have certain qualities, and they're rewarded with positional leadership because of that. Does that make them a leader that people want to follow? That's a whole different question. And I absolutely think that is something that, regardless of what you're born with or what you experience in your culture, nature, nurture, or choice, it is a process of becoming, right? It is a process of growing and becoming that person that people choose to follow. But yeah, do I think some people start with certain advantages? Absolutely.
Okay.
And sometimes I think that there are certain folks that are overrepresented in leadership roles that maybe don't have the hallmarks of leadership that we would aspire to have.
Great point. Great point to note. Valerie and Viplav, are leaders born or made? Oh, good. Okay, see? Oh my gosh, don't come to that's me. I do the common ground. I don't stick to either side. I'm like, let's get to the common ground.
I think, to your point, there are characteristics that a leader has. I think that some people are born with the ability to lead, but the characteristics determine what type of leader they are. I think a good leader becomes a trusted advisor and someone that you would follow. So I have to stay in this kind of, because I'm the firstborn kid, so I think I can lead anything. Come on, the whole neighborhood, let's go.
Which is fine, yes. Viplav, and I think Sonia has. Go ahead.
I think it's nature and nurture, right? You're born with certain talents, but you got to groom that talent, right?
Got it.
And your circumstances. So, like Gandhi, for instance, was he a natural leader? I don't think so. But did he have that drive in him? It's about following your passion.
Got it.
Right? He found a cause. Same thing with Martin Luther King Jr. And then he gets so passionate about it that people eventually sort of gravitate towards you and follow you, right? So,
definitely. Great point.
It's not set in stone.
Okay, sounds good. Sonia?
So just to add to what Linnea, Valerie, as well as Viplav have said, the fact that we all are born with certain abilities, right? And skill sets are what we develop as we move ahead in life. And I believe that everybody has a capacity to actually be a good leader. It's just about the experiences that shape them into the people that they are. So anybody can become a leader. So when I train people, I'm actually empowering people to become leaders and to train other leaders. So I know it for a fact that the 10 people who are sitting in my class who are budding image consultants, I'm actually telling them that you have the ability to lead people. It's just how do you use your personality traits to your advantage? Exactly. And how do you help other people? You need to have a certain amount of self-awareness.
Right.
That is the inherent quality which leaders need to have.
Definitely.
So unless you are aware of yourself, all your strengths and the not so developed strengths, how are you going to lead other people?
Definitely. Shekhar, so is leadership acclaimed or earned? Can I just go out there and say I'm a leader, or are people giving that leadership title to others?
So I think in my perspective, I think it's earned. I'll tell you the reason why. I was working in the corporate sector. Now I'm an entertainer. I'm a stand-up comic. I moderate events. I do shows. In the first 3 years of my life, I didn't speak. So my mom thought, like Albert Einstein, I'll be some kind of prodigy, which was not the case. Only the hairstyle resembles Mr. Albert Einstein. But I believe, like Mr. Vipla was speaking about, we are also victim of our circumstances, especially in a place like India. Uh, you become very jugadu, which is a very colloquial term for you want to survive at any cost. And you survive at any cost, your leadership skills come out automatically. And sometimes for me, right now, is leadership at its best, because you're inspiring, you're motivating, you're engaging people. And we're also living in a world where there's so much of information around us. Like, the internet is such a free space where you can get information. But I think it all boils down to mentoring and what you want to achieve out of it. So I believe it's a mix of both. There is obviously a certain element which comes in as a person, how you are in terms of how you work with people, how you collaborate with people, which we're doing right now as we talk. But I think more than anything is leadership is about leaving an impact, or like Sonia ji was talking about, leaving a legacy behind, because I think that's what leadership boils down to. It's about hard work, and there is no substitute for hard work. You might give it different terms, but leadership is about hard work. Leadership is about gratitude. Leadership is about kindness. I think that's a strength which I think every leader needs to have. And in the post-pandemic world, I think we've all realized it, that kindness is a virtue which never goes out of business.
Yeah, and it's so good sometimes when people know you from 20, 25 years and they come back and give feedback. Last session for Chai and Just Chat, I had one of my a senior doctor batchmate who joined, and he said, Nazeera, you were such a timid girl in medical school for 5.5 years, and look at you now. So I'm like, maybe this is the true me. I was like built in a shell. I was in a shell that time. So it took me these many years to come out. So it's good to get feedback and be evolved. What if I was the same person from 25 years ago, right? I haven't improved. So it's always good to know that. So Sonia, leadership, as we talked about right now, is like, it's fascinating, it's complex, it's multidimensional, right? So it's a subject or a topic that can continue to be discussed. But what do you consider leadership? Is it a skill, a character trait, a behavior, or a process? What I'm ultimately asking you is, what makes a great leader?
So I'm going to break it down. So one is, when it comes to a great leader, I think a great leader has mastered the role that they play, right? At the end of the day, they are also making difficult things look easy. And like I said earlier, there is a large amount of self-awareness that is involved, where people are very aware of themselves. The most important quality which a leader needs to have, besides humility, besides kindness, also the need to empower other people, is emotional quotient, right? Or emotional intelligence. So IQ, we are talking about IQ on one hand, and the other side we are talking about emotional intelligence, where you're able to understand people at a deeper level. You're being empathetic towards them. So I think emotional intelligence is one of the greatest qualities which a leader needs to have. When it comes to the whole, personality trait, characteristic bit, or the behavior, and it being a process, I would say it would be everything. Because one is that it is, of course, an acquired skill. This is in my opinion. The next is, it eventually becomes like a personality trait because you're living it, right? And then over a period of time, it becomes a behavior, and it's an entire process in itself.
Definitely.
Right. So at the end of the day, it's about you as an individual. How are you actually taking people along with you? I think that is the most important thing a leader needs to have. Definitely. You're also preparing other people to be leaders. It's not just going to end with you.
Yeah, you can't just have followers, right?
Yes. People need to resonate or connect with you. Sorry, I cut you, Biplav.
No, that's okay. So, recent history. How do you fit? You said IQ and EQ, right? How do you fit dear ex-President Donald Trump into that?
Well, I think is a matter of debate, and I am not really the right person to comment on him. I'm sure a lot of people
explain his leadership. It confounds me even to today.
So yeah, it does. I mean, to us, we were far, far away, but whatever we used to see. a lot of us had our own individual opinions, some of which were positive and some of which were not so positive. But having said that, I think as much as probably somebody might be considered as probably flaky, I would say, and that's a very strong word that I'm using. But having said that, every individual, for if he's reached a stage in his life where he's actually leading a nation or probably the entire world, right? There must be something in him.
Definitely. So yeah, no,
Right.
Viplav, I am coming to you, but Sonia, great points. I think what you mentioned, so many things are the leader has to create other leaders, and it's not just all about himself or herself. Great points to be noted, Sonia. Thank you, Linnea. The next question is for you, yeah. So when I talk about leader, that means it could be a business leader, corporate sector, nonprofit, even as a mom. Yeah, we forget that we have domestic leaders too at home. So to succeed as a leader, sometimes we have to build meaningful relationships at all levels, right? So communication. Remember the C I talked about, the communication plays an integral part, right? So can you talk how important is relationship building and communication is to be a vital or make impactful leader?
Yeah, that's a great question, and I would kind of even go back to touching on Sonia's point about emotional intelligence. And so, I mean, I think leadership is simple, not simplistic. I think that there are 3 core competencies. I think it is personal intelligence or self-awareness. I think it's emotional intelligence or others awareness. And I think that it is skills intelligence, right? Like we got to know, we got to be competent in what we're doing as well if we want to be leaders that have credibility. So I think marrying those 3 things, those are, I call that the core of leadership. And so that kind of self-awareness starts, or that self-leadership, I look at these different circles of influence and I say, look, it starts, the first person we're all responsible to lead is ourselves. That is the first person. And then it goes our family, and then our team and our organizations and our communities. It kind of ripples out, right? And you want to have alignment between all of those different, you want to be the same person that people are experiencing you in your family as a liberating leader in the same way that they're experiencing you in the community as a liberating leader. And if there's a disconnect between that, that's going to be a real big problem. It's dissociative. Okay. And so communication really looks like marrying that self-awareness with the emotional intelligence of others' awareness, of saying, my goal in communication is not, there are certain communication preferences that I have. I have certain talk styles, just the way I'm born. I'm a little bit more of a storyteller. That's just going to be my talk style. Some people are born with a little bit more of, if you're my daughter, she's a little pioneer, and she has she talks in imperatives or AKA demands, like that's just her talk style. She's just like, I need this, let's do that. That's just how she does. And I've got another child, one of my sons, and he's more of, he talks in question. He never wants to like impose. So he's always like, would this be, so we all have to know our communication style, what it is for ourselves, and then marry that with what do you need on the other side of me? Like, how can I lead in a way that unlocks you and delivers what you need and calibrates my communication? So I'm not just transmitting and hoping that it's going to receive over here, with that you just, Nazeera, know my intention and that you know how to respond to that with actionability. That's communication. Otherwise, if I'm just talking in the way that I want you to, that I want to get information out, I'm just transmitting. Definitely. There's no guarantee there's reception.
Definitely. So, and it goes likewise to you as well, but because you have the important skill of good communication is you should have the ability to listen.
Yeah. Oh, 100% active listening, right? So it looks like transmission has to hit reception. That reception has to say, I know what your intention is. I know what the appropriate actionability is. And then there's a response that then you become the receiver, right? And say, okay, I've listened well enough to understand your intention and I know exactly what's needed. And that's effective communication. And so it's marrying that self-awareness with the other's intelligence as well, of emotional intelligence. So yeah, it definitely all plays together.
Very nice. So basically, is it important to invest in relationships?
Yes. I mean, if you want influence, I say influence is literally a trust exchange. It's if I'm gonna allow Valerie to influence me, I'm giving her my gift of trust. And that's something that's really precious, right? And if she's going to allow me to influence her, it's that same exchange. So I'm looking for different things. It's a relationship, is what it is. And we have to decide how we show up in that relationship.
Very nice. So
sure.
communication seems to be one of the important pillars.
Sure.
So this question, y'all don't have to answer, or y'all can say somewhere in between. So Valerie, are you an introvert or an extrovert?
I am definitely an extrovert who has introvert tendencies.
Okay. Sonia?
I'm an ambivert. I'm like
Awesome. How about you, Linnea?
I am an extrovert. I'm an extroverted processor. I take my cues, and that's a benefit and a liability. Both.
Yeah. Okay.
Thinking comes out here sometimes before it happens.
Definitely.
In here, and that could be a liability. So I've had to learn a little bit of discretion and discipline in my life.
How about you, Shaker?
I'm an extrovert.
Okay. Viplav, we can't see you, but I hope you can hear us.
Yeah, I'm here. Sorry.
So are you an introvert or an extrovert?
I'm an introvert.
Introvert?
Yes.
Okay. So for me, I am an introvert, but I have to get into public speaking arenas and areas, right? So when I do have to do that, I would just like to do that part and leave. So I can't be around much people. So the reason I'm saying this to you and asking you, Linnea, is because you said building relationship is very important. But sometimes introverts just tend to be comfortable within themselves.
Sure.
So how do they come out of that shell?
Well, I think you got to balance, right? Like, what are those things? How do you recharge that? It goes back to almost that self-care, or just being your own best friend, of saying like, look, I know that it's going to be important for me to invest in key relationships, but investing in that key relationship with myself, the most key relationship, is also important. So it's not 100-0. It's not what is just comfortable for me 100% of the time. It's more of a 70-30 equation, I think, of going, look, if I have to spend 30% of my time in things that are going to be draining for me, but I know they're important for my growth, for my influence, for me putting myself out there, what are things then that I get to do to recharge and take care of myself, so that I can then offer that best version of me in a world that's going to drain me. So I got to go back and recharge. And the same thing for extroverts too. It's like, if we're putting everything out there, what are we doing to go back in and fill up? Because if we're running on empty, and I think Valerie kind of talked about this a little bit, that like I have a tendency to just give it all, and then I'm running on empty, and I don't even know I am until stuff that's not so great from the empty tank starts coming out instead of from the place of fullness, right? So I gotta, I have to know what those cues look like so I can go back and recharge as well.
Awesome. Sounds good. Great discussion. Shaker, I'm coming to you, Valerie, right after Shaker. Shaker, let's talk about confidence. Yeah. So to lead anyone, it's a company, a team, a family, or individual, right? Takes confidence. But that confidence cannot be arrogance or just fake bravery. So can you talk about why confidence is important, and what level of confidence is important in a leader or a leadership
So
position?
I think the most important skill a leader should have, other than the power of listening, which is understanding verbal and non-verbal cues, is the fact that inherent confidence that when you're mentoring anyone, everyone, that I have your back. And because I think the number one problem the entire world faces is lack of trust. If there was trust in everyone around us, we would not have boundaries, right? Countries would not have boundaries. So the entire thing of trust boils down from there, right? And I think that's where leadership really comes in, and that confidence is not your confidence in your face, that understated confidence. If I have to give an example, for example, cricket is extremely popular in India, right? We have
in John's Creek too. So
yeah.
the
So
city of John Street this week, we had the cricket played by multicultural team.
absolutely. So there's a captain by the name of MS Dhoni, and cricket is religion in India. For example, India is a huge country and huge population, and wherever you go, people ask you questions about cricket, and cricket is a lifeline of India. So this gentleman I'm talking about, MS Dhoni, he's a man who's led India to victories all across in the cricketing circuit, for example. And India as a country was never known for winning anything earlier. So there's been a generation shift. It's been because of the leadership. It's been because of the confidence. For example, MS Dhoni had in his players, and that quiet confidence is what I'm talking about. That confidence that I have your back. I will make sure you deliver. You just have to trust me on that. That trust factor is very important. And I know this personally because I mentor a lot of kids, and I'm talking about kids. I mentor 16-year-olds, 17-year-olds for whom confidence is never an issue, because I feel they are on the line, which is that white line, which is overconfidence and confidence, which many people might think is very overconfident. But if they get the mind to it, they can achieve anything, which is the case with all of us. But do they trust? Trust is the number one issue, I feel. That trust is what is very important, and trust is not something which can be quantified. Trust is an emotion. The fact that all six of us are on this call today, we trust each other. We are opening ourselves out and speaking about things which we like, which we hate, which really inspires all of us. So I think that confidence is all about getting that trust in, because when somebody is confident in a leader, they can walk through mountains for them. I think that's why they say, right, it's a leap of faith. And I think it all boils down to that confidence you need to have within yourself and within the person who you're mentoring or you're leading, as a team or as a company or as a nation. I think once you have that in place, I think it's very simple.
And so, Shekhar, so that there's no space for insecurity in that leader then?
Absolutely.
Okay. Sounds great. That was a great example as well.
And
So
that's a very valid point. My family comes from a military background. I mean, I have for Shekhar and Sonia, my aunt, my dad's younger sister, retired as Army brigadier, the highest ranking woman back then, right? So you remember Cargill? She was running a field ambulance, right? So I've seen that. I mean, when it comes to manpower management, the military does the best job, right? And so when you are the captain or the major or the colonel or the general, right, you have to lead your troops, right? And so yes, of course, there's the hierarchy, and there's like, if your captain says jump, you jump. But it's also the trust, right? That your commander is not going to lead you down the wrong path.
Or lead you astray. Perfect. Yes. No, completely agree with Bob. Yes. So yeah, no, great example of MS Dhoni and the Army captain. The trust plays an important factor, and I'm sorry that trust doesn't T is not in a C, but it's okay. We'll take that as one of the pillars. So let's talk about compassion and commitment, Valerie. Right? And you know why I'm bringing compassion here. So apart from being on the board of Compassionate Atlanta, which you all should look up, compassionateatl.com or org. I'm sorry, I'm not getting the right website address, but then a great team. And Valerie, you are also one of the key stakeholders in the nonprofit. So tell us why compassion is important. Can gestures of empathy and humility be regarded as a weak leader? And I've been told that a few times. You have to be strong and get at them in the corporate field. But I was only showing empathy, and I was understanding what the other person was going through. So please talk about compassion.
I believe that compassion, a compassionate leader builds trust, because you have to show that you're willing to be empathetic. We all have lives outside of the scope of work that we do. We don't just show up just in that space to do the task that's before us. We're leaving a home with other people that we're responsible for. I think to the points that have been made earlier, your own personal self-actualization, how compassionate are you? And how do you then transfer that compassion over to others that you have to lead? Deadlines have to be met. Life happens. We've just seen it through this pandemic. We've all had to shift to be available to not only our internal self, but the people around us. And my dear friend Shaker said earlier that, making sure that we're there for the people that we care for, both in the leadership role within our own spheres of influence, both personally and professionally. I think for me, you can be a leader that can be a little bit more stern from time to time, but you can be compassionate in that sternness. You don't have to always sit back in just a hard line, but that gray area gives you room for compassion because it allows you to listen more, create trust because you were compassionate regarding whatever the circumstance was. You don't always have to say it's either black or white. I think compassion lives in that space of intersections where two issues come together and then magic happens in that intersection. That's where you get to be compassionate versus sitting outside of that space, but just bringing that compassion to how do we find a solution that's going to work for all parties involved. It's never going to be 50-50, but how compassionate can we be to get folks to the next space that they need to be in, as well as how do we lead them there, and then be a participant. Like you said earlier, Shaker, let them know we got their backs. That's what compassion is.
The trust. Talk about commitment, Valerie. How Steve Jobs, we all know him as a great leader in the corporate sector. We also know the pros and cons of his life, his commitment to just the work. So the family life was, even the other day, someone was saying, yeah, he showed himself as a great leader, but what is he to his daughter? So is there a balance? And is he a leader just because he didn't put time on his daughter? Can you talk about commitment?
I think every role and responsibility that we have has a level of commitment baked into it. How committed to you as a parent? What is that balance that you want to have between the work that you do and the people that you're responsible for? My own children made a comment to me when they started to matriculate through undergrad and through grad school. My son said, Mom, all the things that you've done when we were little, why weren't you on more boards? Why did you choose to do more outside of the space that you were in? I said, well, I didn't want a nanny to raise you. I made a conscious decision that your values and the way that you see the world came through my influence, not someone that I paid to spend time with you. So just to know that they saw she was more committed to the dynamics of our development versus going so far outside. Now, I still have my places that I could do that, but I think you have to be committed to your personal, professional, spiritual life, the totality of who you are. How do you commit to showing up and being your best self, which I've heard that before among my colleagues here. So staying committed to do the work that you can. And people see when you're committed and they understand because they will follow a leader who will get down in the trenches like they have to. So I think that's where commitment for me shows up to be an example. Instead of asking other people to be committed, I have to illustrate that I'm committed as well. So we're in this together.
That's perfect. That's perfect. I think leading by example allows others the confidence to follow. So Viplav, let's get to the courage, right? One of the other pillars of leadership. You very briefly touched upon it earlier with examples from your family background. So Robert Stevenson said, keep the fears to yourself, but share your courage with others. Yeah. So my question is, how does a leader demonstrate courage?
Well, I don't know about leader, but to me, the definition of courage is be afraid, but still do what you believe. Right? That's pretty much it. Right? You believe in something, you're scared of it, you're afraid, you don't know what's going to happen, but keep at it.
So basically, you're saying break barriers and sort of take calculated risks.
Yeah, pretty much.
Okay. So all of y'all, we talked about commitment, compassion, courage, confidence.
Shaker had something to say about
communication.
courage.
Oh, go ahead, so Shaker, go ahead.
On a lighter note, for me, courage is being scared of turbulence, but doing skydiving.
I have to try.
I'm actually scared of turbulence, but I'm skydiving.
Okay, good, great example, Shaker. I don't know, I can't do it, but that's something I would love to try. Yeah, great.
I would
So
rather do skydiving than bungee.
I would like bungee jumping.
No, for me in my head, like bungee jumping, like it's gonna snap my back or something. But
Okay.
skydiving, I can totally.
Okay, yeah, good. Each of us have different levels of courage. We will break the
Yeah,
barriers for.
I think a great filter for when for to summon that courage that we all need to do when there are things that ahead of us that are scary, in my world to sometimes that has looked like running for office, right? Like or starting a business or all these different things, but it's really looking at the fear and saying, running it through a filter and just saying, okay, fear, let's get specific about you, talking to it. Like I talk to myself. I don't think that makes me crazy. I think it actually makes me a little more self-aware, but I say, what am I afraid to lose? And answer that honestly. Like, what am I trying to hide? Like, am I afraid that people will think that I'm not smart enough, that I don't have enough education, or what am I afraid to lose? What am I trying to hide? What am I trying to prove? What am I trying to lose? If I can ask and answer those questions honestly, then I could say, okay, look, even if my fear comes true and I feel like I'm going to lose this, or, this gets revealed, or I don't get to prove that, like, now I can say yes from a place of courage. Doesn't mean that those things, they're not controlling me anymore. Yes. Now I have talked to it, and sometimes made a plan for those things as well. And sometimes for me, it also looks just like my personal, faith is just going, okay, wait a minute. When all those things are flashing red lights for me, I can just kind of go to that place, that core for me of just saying, okay, who am I and whose am I? And I can go ahead and say yes, knowing that I still belong, going back to that belonging in the beginning. And so that gives me that courage.
Definitely.
I think,
and I think that's sort of coming out of comfort zone, right? Ultimately, it's unless you come out of your comfort zone, you're never going to evolve. You're going to be in the same for 20 years, 30 years from now. So definitely, courage is much needed, and probably calculated risk, and not a dumb decision, of course.
Yeah.
Right. Talking about that, you cannot convince me to get on a roller coaster.
And I'm sure we all have our fears. I'm sure we all have our fears too. So
I just hate roller coasters.
You can. Okay, good to know.
I'm just one of those people. Like, I hate that. Like, and like.
Okay, good to know. So Sonia,
I join you in that.
I'm
not a roller coaster fan
okay.
either,
this is my personal mission. My personal mission is to get Valerie and Viplav on the Six Flags Georgia roller coaster by the end of this year. Okay, so that's my mission. Y'all can ask me next year what happened.
Wait.
I don't have any desire.
What are you offering? Let's start, right? Valerie, $100. I'm not gonna go. Come on.
So, okay, for full disclosure, this is where the competitive nature shows up.
That's what I was gonna say.
So let's see.
Not me, Valerie. I'm asking. She wants to take us to Six Flags. Okay. I started the bet at 100, and I'm asking you. You raise the stakes. She's gonna pay.
Okay, no.
I'll put 100 in with you, my friend.
So, Valerie and Viplav, we're going to have this conversation later, but for sure, next year, Linnea, you can ask me what happened. Okay? So Sonia and Valerie, this question.
So this is like Valerie too. Is I have no desire to like skydive or to do a roller coaster, but if somebody dares me to, like, or there's like peer pressure. I'll do it.
Exactly, and that's how you grow. So Sonia,
I just did that in Alabama. I just jumped off a cliff in Alabama.
Wow.
I didn't want to, but I did because people said
now you have the experience. Now we have the experience. So Sonia and Valerie, this question is for you. So we talked about all the traits and behaviors of good leaders. Let's talk about toxic leaders. What about bad leadership? What if the leadership is manipulated or misused? Can we talk about that? a bit? And I want you and Sonia to tag team on this answer.
Sure. Valerie, would you like to go ahead? I could just
No,
add on to you.
go ahead, my dear. You've already started talking. Go ahead.
So, yes, there are bad leaders. Of course, we have seen when it comes to communities, we look at organizations, we look at nations. They are led by people who can be very toxic. That leads to a very toxic environment. Many a times, a lot of these communities crumble because of probably people who don't know how to lead the organization, or probably who are very who are only looking at their own vested interests. Many a times, especially people who are led by authoritarians, it just doesn't work out, because at the end of the day, everyone is pretty much free spirited in their own right. We all are, right? And we, as much as we are led by someone, we want to be led in the right manner, which will empower us to be better individuals, better human beings, also evolve in society. So yeah, of course, it can be detrimental, and it happens from time to time. And I don't think, like we have discussed earlier, it is, I feel, according to me, it's an acquired skill set. Also, there has to be a certain amount of selflessness involved. When you decide to become a leader, you need to be selfless. So you would be thinking in terms of the people that you're leading more than yourself first. Only then can you be a good leader.
Awesome.
Otherwise, you'll end up being toxic. So over to you, Valerie.
I agree with you wholeheartedly. I will not name the organization, but I was affiliated with an organization that the CEO was one of the top worst CEOs in the country. And the culture of the company pretty much mirrored his leadership style, which was very combative, and it created a culture where people would not settle into some common ground. It was either my way or no way. And unfortunately, when you have groups of people that are trying to meet the goals and objectives of an organization, and the leader created a toxic environment, it doesn't allow you to get to those goals and objectives in a way where you're not harming people who have maybe the skill sets to do the work, but now they have to navigate through this environment that is so untrustworthy. And so when the politics of a leader creates strife and division within the organization, it doesn't bode well for the people who have to govern themselves in that kind of toxic space. Because like I said, they have the talent and the ability to do the work, but if the culture is misaligned with trust and integrity and how you show up, not only for yourself, but for others, I've seen it firsthand, and it was not a pretty sight, because people were never sure of themselves in regards to who could they trust to communicate their thoughts and their ideas, their vulnerabilities. They were afraid that there would be a heavy-handed retribution because of the way that the leader led the organization.
So what is that one behavior or trait that you thought, or do you think derails more leaders' careers?
Ego.
There you go. And you're absolutely right.
I would also add to it pride and arrogance.
Yeah.
Yep.
Exactly. So is it true that some people want to become leaders to satisfy their ego or pride?
Oh, absolutely. And I think those who find themselves on that list of not being good leaders have a lack of self-awareness. And so they create this false bravado through this broken ego to lift themselves up. There was a question about leadership of a certain individual prior to, and that was a perfect example. If I will gaslight all day long to create this illusion, it's kind of like the shock and awe doctrine. If you keep seeing this hand, you keep seeing this hand, do you know what the other one is doing? You don't, because I'm so busy getting your attention here because of my weakness. I have to show you something that will keep you distracted so you won't really see how broken I am.
Got it. Great point. So, Shekhar, my next question to you is, a lack of leadership also causes confusion, or misdirection or gaps, right, between strategies or execution in companies or even in nonprofits or in any political arena, anywhere. where decisions have to be made. So one of the questions that one of the attendees or the registrant asks is, how does one, what are the steps to lead with the legacy?
So I think steps to lead with the legacy boils down to one intrinsic factor, which is a core set of values. Your character needs to be strong as a leader, because if you're a leader, people have to look up to you. And like I was mentioning earlier, humility is very important. Respect for the individual is very important. The biggest strength a leader can have is not the strength of execution, is not the strength of getting things done, but is a strength of compassion. It is strength of empathy. It is strength of finding out what's going on wrong in the other person's life. I think that for me is leadership, because the other skills you can learn along the way. Those are all technical skills. But about empathy, about trying to understand how to help another person out without emphasizing on it, that's a special skill, which only comes down to the skill of listening, which only comes down to your emotional intelligence. And I think the most important factor a leader should have is the skill of storytelling, because your
Very nice.
stories have to be powerful. Timing.
Yeah.
I think timing is very important as a leader, the ability to take decisions at the right time.
We never talked about timing, right? In all this discussion for an hour almost. So there's something external factors that beyond control a leader has. And I think it's the split of second or decisions he makes or he doesn't make, right? So with that, I want to go into the cultural question. And I want Linnea and Shekhar to join hands on this. So leadership is an action, not a position. We, obviously, you can't just have the position there. So both of you all have worked globally in government sector or organizations or agencies trying to improve the performance or team performances. So now comes the Western culture, the Eastern culture. Yeah. So you don't want me talking about all the culture shock I had when I came here. And some people would still call me fresh off the boat, but that's fine. So Western culture is built on individualistic society, individualism, importance to individuals. The CEO makes his own coffee, even in a big company. The Eastern culture is more hierarchical and authoritarian. And the CEO doesn't might be now, but I don't know if the CEO makes his or her own coffee at this time. I don't know. But in your opinion, I want you all to tell us what are the different styles that Eastern carries and Western carries, and is there a global leadership that is acceptable across the world, which is customized to different cultures?
Go ahead, Shekhar. I'll follow you.
Okay. So I think the way things are right now, as we talk in the year 2021, I think we have come to a sense of leadership which can be an amalgamation of all things you just mentioned. I think leadership is all about being collaborative, I feel. Leadership is all about being participatory. Leadership is all about leading with humility, because I think the world needs that and much more right now. We cannot have my way or the highway, like Valerie was mentioning a few minutes back. That can never happen, which she alluded to, and which is perfectly right. I think leadership is more of an emotion. And I think organizations or nations or countries really have to go ahead and try to build a culture. When I'm saying culture, we are living in a world where everybody has been working from home in the last 2 years. And you will have a situation where people will have to go and work from the office. And there are companies where employees have joined in the last 1.5 years, 2 years. How do you get them to work the way you want them to work? So somewhere you will have to collaborate. I think that's where the human resource function becomes the most important function of an organization, along with operations, that is. And that's where leadership really comes into picture. So we are really living in interesting times. And I think the next few months is going to show us what really leadership is all about. It's not going to be about being individualistic. It's not going to be aspirational. It's going to be a mix of being collaborative, also being spiritual. When I'm saying being spiritual, you need to understand that godliness lies within us. In the sense that if you realize that you can be your best version of yourself, and you want to be the best version of yourself every given day, every given minute, and keeping things simple, you can really succeed in whatever you do, which is a very utopian philosophy. But if a leader can bring that down to the company or the people who lead, who he or she is leading, it becomes very simple. So I think it all boils down to that equation that you have. And I think the world is coming to that phase where everything is going to be very, very collaborative, where people are going to be listening to each other, where kindness is going to be the biggest strength, and an element of gratitude is important. But like I always say, my favorite topic is storytelling. I think a good leader is somebody who can express himself or herself through stories and make those stories count. Because we are living in a day and age where the attention span of everybody around us is less than the span of a fly. So your storytelling skills have to be on point. And if your storytelling skills are not good, you will not be a good leader. Because storytelling is all about emotions, storytelling is all about honesty, storytelling is all about relevance. And a leader has to be relevant in today's day and age. Otherwise, it's finito.
Very well said, Shekhar. So, Linnea, I know you are going to chime in, but also answer if the globalization and the COVID and all this that happened, has it helped in breaking those some of those barriers between East and the West culture of leadership?
I love this question because I'm kind of a product of East and West. I am actually Dutch and Indonesian. And so, I've got a little bit of and my grandparents really modeled that really well. My grandfather was very much he's Indonesian, and he was very much about relationships and affection and, in collaboration and kind of that working together. And my grandmother was very much about the task and getting things done and the individual, the self-sufficiency kind of piece, like in some ways. But to watch their marriage, 70 years of marriage, which is incredible milestone. But to watch that merging of that culture just in their relationship was just such a great life lesson for me. And, I think there's some universal hallmarks of leaders, right? Of good leaders. They're secure, they're confident, and they're humble. And really, humbleness is just a right size view of yourself. It's not that you're not enough, but you're not too much. It is a right size, realistic view of who you are as it relates to people on the other side of you. And so I look at kind of this East-West dynamic, and I think that, man, it's always a pendulum shift, right? It's always like a pendulum swing. And so how can something be overdone in that kind of, what I would say, more of that Western culture is more of that challenge culture, right? Like that individualistic, drive hard. It's more about valuing this skills intelligence, maybe over that emotional intelligence, and saying you got to defend for yourself. That pioneer spirit, we would say, that kind of a lot of U.S. history focuses on. There are great things about that, and it can be overdone, and it can be really unhealthy. And then, so that's that challenge. But then the support side of going, look, we are that compassion, that kindness. Like, we have got to lend strength. If you have strength, lend it. That's called empowerment. So, like, a blending of those two things of support and challenge, of saying, I'm gonna lend strength, I'm gonna empower, I'm going to bring challenge, because without challenge, we don't grow. And we have to step into places that are uncomfortable. We have to be realistic. And sometimes the most challenging things are right-sizing ourselves and other people with what is realistic and what is true. So calibrating support and challenge allows us as leaders to be both empowering and provide opportunities for other people. That multiplication thing that we talk about, that legacy thing that we talk about. And to me, that's the hallmark of a leader who's like liberating. And I think that that's what the world is craving liberating leaders. And so overdoing it on the support side is not good either, if you are robbing people of what is realistic and what their potential is, and calling them up into that potential, requiring them to grow and to be honest. But dominating, obviously, and just looking out for yourself is not the right way either. So how do we calibrate it? And I think it's like these micro dials I always look at, like, if somebody's got like a little compass on their head, how am I like calibrating support and challenge? And what does this person need? What do I need? Do I need more support? Do I need more challenge for myself? But what does that person on the other side of me need? Are they needing more support right now? Are they needing more challenge? I think of this with my kids all the time. And I have 4 kids, and they all need to be calibrated differently, right? Support and challenge looks different for each one of them. But it's really important. If I want to be a liberating parent, a liberating mother to them, if I want to lend them strength, but also want them to step into opportunities and their potential, I've got to calibrate.
Definitely.
And so I think this is a global thing. So
awesome. Sounds great. So it looks like the last 2 years is continuing to break the barriers between East and the West culture, something that we can learn from each other. So Valerie and Viplav and Sonia, let's talk about leadership styles, right? So we read about it. We never said he or she has this specific leadership style, because I think it changes according to times. But I would like for us to discuss about is there a best leadership style that works, that benefits everyone, or do these leadership styles have to think long term, or are they thinking about growing the organization or themselves? So if we can touch upon that, and also about what does it mean to be an authentic leader. Viplav, you want to start, and then Sonia, and then Valerie, please.
So I personally, there's no one size fit all. It's so hard to pinpoint. Oh, geez, you got a book that you got to follow, an algorithm, or 10 points. It depends on the people you're dealing with. Okay. The bottom line is that you have to sort of empower them, right? It's about trust. Okay, trust me. I'm telling you something, and I've got your back, right? So that first thing is trust. So you have a team. It's 2, 10, 20, 100 people, what have you, right? So you establish the trust, and go from there, right? And then along the way, you have to then prove. Right? Live up to that trust. So.
Okay. So what about the Viplav? Just in continuation, what about the younger generation? They are not mostly used. I mean, my daughter tells me, "Oh, mom, you're old now," because you're thinking old. We've moved beyond those thinking nowadays. So what about the young generation? Do the older generation leaders shift their mindset and thought? Or do we have to start getting aligned to the current times?
Well, this gray hair helps. Salt and pepper.
It's wisdom, huh? Carry the wisdom.
That's a question of every generation, right? I think every generation had this situation, right? Our previous generation, we thought that they were not cool enough.
Yes, my dad still thinks I'm a rebel. Yeah, true.
So I think that's a phase for all of us.
Definitely. So Valerie, Sonia, please, and then Valerie.
So to address the first part of your question in terms of the different styles of leadership, of course, there are authoritarian and there is democratic and everything. And just like Viplav said, there is no specific style one can typically adopt. And also, I'm glad you brought up the whole thing of keeping up with the generation, right? So I think every leader needs to understand the new generation. So you look at the millennials, or you look at the Gen Z, right?
Gen Z, yeah.
You have to advance with them. You have to understand how they are wired, because they are wired very differently. So they need more empathetic, especially in the work environment, they need more empathetic understanding. And you also need to have the spiritual quotient. And I think at some point in time, Shekhar had mentioned about the whole spiritual aspect. So they need to understand the whole spiritual quotient, and also prepare other people, other leaders into understanding that you're not always going to be working with technology, with machines, right? We have machines, but there are machines, but they can help us to a certain extent. But at the end of the day, human beings are more important. You're interacting with human beings, and human beings are capable of emotions, love, affection, everything. So you need to prepare other leaders into understanding other people at a deeper level. Right? Understand them from the whole spiritual, emotional quotient perspective, which most people don't understand. They fail to understand. And that is the saddest part. Because in most companies, why are people unhappy with regard to their bosses? Because the bosses are only worried about their targets.
Correct.
Right? And they're not worried about their employees. And at the end of the day, why does somebody want to leave an organization after serving for about 8 to 10 years? Because somewhere they don't feel the connect.
Or
Their
don't
leader
feel appreciated.
they don't feel appreciated. Their leader has not connected with them or resonated with them or stopped to understand what are they going through and why are they behaving the way they are behaving. Right? So I think it's very important to actually understand the people that you are leading and to connect with each of them and thereby formulate whatever strategies you have.
Definitely.
I think that is the most important.
Great, great. So on a lighter note, Valerie, you're going to laugh at this. So I have Facebook and I have Pandora. So my daughter says that's for old people because she has Snapchat and she has Spotify. I took her to an ice cream shop that other day, and there were all these funny names: waffle ice cream and this some mint, some ice cream. I don't know. I'm like, how would anyone eat an ice cream with waffle in it or with something else in it? And I ordered butter pecan in it, and she said, "Mom, I was just hoping you wouldn't order butter pecan because that's for old people." So I'm like, oh my gosh, she's already calling me old. So that was on a lighter note. But Valerie, please tell us, do leadership styles have to consider thinking growing their organization?
So I have to ditto my colleagues here that there is no one size that fits all.
Absolutely.
But I think the biggest piece that people miss in leadership is their lack of cultural competency.
Mhm.
Because you cannot force your observation of the world and your station in the world on others. This issue of this multi-generational knowledge transfer, I sit in a very interesting seat myself when it comes to the generations that I'm lifting as I'm climbing. And I'm being lifted by a generation, I'm standing on their shoulders. So I think when you understand that um, it requires the spirituality, it requires a deeper understanding that of the people that you lead, the diversity of the people that you lead. And this is not a cookie cutter relationship. It's based on that one on one storytelling to find that commonality and to also be able to see that even within a larger scope, when you're leading, the diversity of people, the diversity of thought, the diversity of lived experiences, and don't look through your lens only to determine how you maneuver and lead people. Because they will give you information if you're willing and able to listen to allow you to become a better leader based on the information shared, both coming from the young folks, coming from those who folks have gone behind us or front of them. I'm sorry. I'm a big proponent of multi-generational engagement because there's wisdom on both sides. Come on, guys, let's remember when we were the younger folks and our parents thought we were crazy. I had my green, black, and red leather suede shoes, trying to have an afro looking like Angela Davis because that's how I saw myself in the world, right? So we have to be respectful and mindful of the TikTok, the chit chat, TikTok,
The
I have
Snapchats.
children too. They're like, Mom, you don't want to post that on Facebook. I'm like, yeah, I do. No, you. Why don't you just put that someplace with your people? I'm like, my people are all people, so I'm telling everybody what I think about. So moving on these technology platforms have been interesting too, of how we communicate and share our leadership thoughts and ideas of our observations. So I'm just going to put it on any platform that I'm comfortable with. I do find that with that technology, it does pull you away from that one-on-one interpersonal relationship, which I think is so critical. So I try to make sure that I do one-on-one times with the folks that I'm dealing with to take them out of the crowd and hear succinctly what they're thinking, and then bring that back to a larger population. I think over time.
Awesome. So, Valerie, have you had an instance where you've lost your cool during your leadership journey? All the time?
There have been instances in my youth when I was leading. I established my firm when I was 27 years old, and I think probably it was an example of losing it but gaining it at the same time. I'll give you this story. That was a test of how do you show up in a hostile environment and maintain your cool at the same time. They did become my client that day, by the way. Now, as time had gone on and different issues of being female, the trilogy of oppression shows up, being race, class, and gender, and having to speak truth to some fake power about what you won't do and how you will not relegate me to what your interpretation of the other, because I heard that a lot. The other one that we had didn't do this. The other one that we didn't have didn't do that. So yes, there have been instances where I've had to go back to my days of playing basketball and throw an elbow where they didn't see I threw it. So there have been instances where I have lost my cool, but I think in losing my cool, it's always to make sure that the person that comes behind me won't have to be a victim of this individual so that they can understand. And sometimes you do have to get a little forceful to help people to understand that is not acceptable.
Definitely. And I think facing through those instances and making decisions sort of has helped you grow as a leader as you move forward. Absolutely. In making decisions much faster. Great. So Shekhar, the next question is for you. Let's talk about inspiration and motivation, right? And I think we touched upon this briefly as we went along, but how do great leaders inspire people? So usually people tell me very often that I'm an inspiration, but then I feel I'm just doing that a normal person is supposed to do. Like, isn't this what you're supposed to do? So for me, I'm not able to understand why they call that an inspiration, but I just want to know, how do great leaders actually inspire people? Do they have to, I mean, if you can talk about that, please.
So I think it all boils down to seeing is believing, right? And if you look around us, if you look at great leaders around us, from the likes of Nelson Mandela to Mahatma Gandhi, all they were very charismatic. They had a vision in the mind, and they walked the talk, literally, figuratively, and metaphorically. If you're talking about, say, for example, Martin Luther King, also he came in at a time when social media was not there, but he was able to galvanize an entire population together and make things count because of the power of the voice. So I think that just speaks about the fact that if you want to do something, you will do it, as an inspiration. And I think people tend to realize it, tend to look at it, because like I said earlier, I think seeing is believing, and everybody needs that one leader who can walk the talk, who can look at fear in the eye and say, you know what, I'm not scared of anything. Because I think the number one fear in the world is not the fear of dying. The number one fear in the world is the fear of speaking in public. It all boils down to that. So I think somewhere that's what a leader is all about. A leader may be as scared as others in terms of public speaking because people are judging you. But if you're able to be in a position where you feel that, I want to speak my mind out, I want to be honest about it. And that's a very, it's very, I think it's an oxymoron in itself. You're trying to be simple, but it's so tough being simple. We're living in a world where there are so many filters around us. If you look at all the apps around us, they have all the filters in the world, right? But it's very simple being simple if you want to be. So I think somewhere leadership is all about inspiration, and I think it's about walking the talk. It's about staying relevant. It's about also having fun along the way. Like, don't complicate it. It's very simple. You will. I think leadership is not just about succeeding. Leadership is also about failing. And if you're open about your failures, I don't see a lot of leaders talking about that, because somewhere they feel that if I talk about my failures, it makes me weaker as a person. But I believe your failures make you stronger. If you fail, it also shows to the rest of the world, to the rest of the people from his or her tribe. So you know what? This person failed. Even I can fail. It makes that person more humane, because everybody is not out to be a superhuman, right? I don't think it's ever possible. We have our good days. We have our bad days. It's about making sure those good days are better than our bad days. That's the only logic to it. So I think somewhere, inspiration lies in being honest. Inspiration lies in being relevant. Inspiration lies in being simple. And inspiration lies in, failing. There's nothing wrong in failing. It's about taking it on the chin and saying, you know what, I failed today, but I'll succeed tomorrow. It's as normal as for everybody.
Definitely. And Shekhar, as rightly said, failure is the stepping stone to success. So two things that I had while I was preparing for the moderation, two things that you brought up are definitely spirituality. I don't have anywhere spirituality in my notes, so thank you for bringing that up. And definitely failures. I had an authentic leader, but I didn't really put failures into the leadership. So that just shows we're always tuned to success, success, success. So thank you, Shaker, for making it real. Viplav, I do. Yes, go ahead.
I was just going to add one thing to what Shaker said, because I love
Yeah.
that. And I think that it almost goes back to those filters, those questions I was saying before. Why are we afraid to speak in public, or why are we afraid to talk about our failures? It's because, what are we afraid to lose? What are we trying to prove? What are we trying to hide? Those filters, right? Like, we haven't run through those filters, or we did and we decided it wasn't worth it. But what people value more than they value that perfect, successful looking, appearing leaders, they value authenticity, right? And it's that trust that we talked about that we've been talking about this whole way through, of saying, like, look, if I'm going to trust you, I have to be able to go, I could put myself in your shoes, right? Like, and that you're real and that you are authentic. And so I absolutely think that if you cannot talk about your failures, if you cannot talk about your areas of even incompetencies, because we all have them, then you're not being authentic.
Absolutely.
And then I don't really want to follow you. So, like, I think about this in public office. I think about, I am much more likely to follow a leader or to vote for a leader who says, look, I'm going to show up to try to tackle something and make it better, than I am to follow a leader who says, I'm going to show up and fix it.
Definitely.
Because in the public realm, guess what? All the easy stuff has already been fixed. It's just the hard stuff that's left. And in that, I think true leaders show up and make it better, right?
Definitely,
Like,
yes.
we don't, and when you say that, I'm going to show up to make it better, there's a humility in that. It's saying, look, I am secure and I am confident and I am going to contribute, but I'm not pretending I can fix and I have all the answers and I don't make mistakes, because we just do. And so those are the leaders that I'm drawn to, that I'm attracted to. I'm like, yes, let me follow you, because I'm a make it better kind of person. I'm not I'm not perfect. And so anyone who says that they are, I can't relate to them.
Definitely. So one thing is, there's no perfect anyone, right? And we all come with our flaws, but what the talents that we can use to improve or broaden and bring a better change is much needed. So Viplav, I'm going to ask you this question, and then I want to talk about with all of us about gender leadership. We cannot be blind to those, some of those, race and gender. So Viplav, working from home requires a lot of self-discipline, right? And especially during the last 2 years, it has been difficult decisions for many companies to have their employees work from home scenario. But the big organizations have sort of balanced themselves out and have figured out a way that work can be done. But what about those startups? The brick and mortar stores that need people there. How do you think they took a big hit, or did their leadership really matter on bringing their people back to the office?
Ironic. On the contrary, the brick and mortar stores, they actually did good during the pandemic. I don't know if you noticed last year, the lines outside of Home Depot. Suddenly people are like stuck at home, and all these DIY projects, right, they wanted to do, they'd been procrastinating for a number of years. And they were all out there buying paint, buying this, buying that, right? Because it's too much time, suddenly, right? You're not sitting in traffic for 3 hours every day. And a typical work day in the office was actually 4 hours of productive work, 4 hours of socializing, going for lunch, happy hour, etc., which was good, which is something I miss, really miss, the camaraderie, the office politics, etc. But then suddenly you have all this spare time. So then, yeah, you're just sitting around and like, okay, I was planning to paint my, blah. Let's go down to Ace Hardware or Home Depot. And Home Depot's did tremendously well during the pandemic. So it turned out to be sort of like a blessing in disguise. You know, if you think about it, you quantify it, the hours multiplied the number of people, the spare time they had, right, to address all these home projects. It was a boom.
Okay. So what about the startups? As you mentioned, two big corporations are not, the startups are cannot match up to them as of yet. So in startups, sometimes the employees have to come to work in order, so they have a disciplined work style. So did you think the leadership mattered there, that they were able to get to their employees through virtual communication?
Well, it's a bit of a gray area, right? So there's nothing that will substitute face-to-face co-location. I've done that. Your whole team is sitting around, right? You literally turn around and like, hey, dude, did you do this? Okay, what's the problem, right? Versus virtual, yes, you have all sorts of tools, right? Instant, messaging and so yes, there is no substitute for in face, right
Okay.
there, sitting with your team, right?
Definitely. And so basically the leaders should have empowered their employees enough to do the same amount of work that they'd have done in person.
Right. So
Okay.
like I said, the communication lag that comes with working remotely, on the flip side, I don't think it really affected the productivity. Actually, if anything, it went up because suddenly you're sitting at home. So there's no 9 to 5, right? When you go into work, you show up at 9, you leave at 5. And then you waste 3 hours commuting. Versus work from home means there's no 5. It could be 6, it could be 7, right? You're working on something, it drags on. You
Definitely.
sit on your couch watching something on Netflix, you got your laptop,
Valerie's nodding her head. Valerie, go on.
Well, I'm nodding my head because I have been a part of what used to be called the cottage industry. So in the 80s, when I started my firm, this whole remote working from home, COVID for me was like, ooh, good. I don't have to be bothered out there. I could come back into my space because the discipline was there. The motivation was always there. So I think, to your point, there's no 9 to 5. And so productivity did go up. It gave people a chance to take a break when they needed it versus being told this is the window of time that you have to govern yourself to be productive. So yeah, I'm nodding my head because, like I said, I'm somewhat nocturnal. When you're building a company and you're also building a family at the same time. Thank God my company was 3 years old before I had my first child, but 3 years in, Allstate, Kraft, IBM, Baxter, Sears. I had already amassed a nice portfolio of clients, but now I had to start to manage my time with these children and their lives that they were evolving. But I think I learned working from home for me has been a blessing. It has given me an opportunity to be mom and also business owner at the same time. I was able to pursue some of my dreams and also be available to my family. But it took its toll because, like I said, 4 hours a night, I'm good.
Okay, sounds great. So great perspectives. So let's go back to let's talk about this important topic, right? A subtopic, I would say. Are women better leaders?
Of course.
There goes the thumbs up. Okay. Now, so I heard a yes from most of you, but what typical qualities do you think, Sonia, women display that are advantageous to being a great leader?
I think the most important aspect for a leader and a woman leader to remember is that a lot of us have largely been a part of a patriarchal society, right? And we are all breaking the barriers. And I think this is happening globally. I would say a lot of our cultures, a lot of us are living in a male dominated society. So we are, one, breaking the barriers. So one, we need to, of course, keep tapping our backs. If we are able to take care of ourselves, if we are able to be independent financially, and also lead organizations or start our own companies. But also another thing is, when you become a leader, one thing we all need to remember, it's a very lonely place up there. Because it takes a lot to go up there to reach that height. And you will also face a lot of criticism from time to time. So there would be your followers, there would be people who would be like really appreciating you for your efforts. But then there would be those who would probably be the bullies or the procrastinators, or probably very insecure people who would not like you up there. Right? So it's important to accept the criticism that you get from them and actually be kind to them and offer gratitude that they are also helping you evolve by being the way they are to you, right? So we not only get people in our lives, in our environment, who are very positive, but we also get those who are not so positive. So it's about accepting people for who they are, and also allowing yourself to evolve and be more positive, have a positive mindset. And I think that is very important for a lady to have. And earlier, I think, we were having this conversation where Valerie was talking about how important it is. Women are multifaceted. And they are multitaskers. It's not easy to actually be running a house, raising your children, cooking for them, your family, and then working. I mean, imagine, that's why people call women as, having in India, we have like, they show us as, like a goddess who has,
Shakti, Durga.
right? So why are we portrayed like that? Because probably we are wired to be like that. So I think that's the most important quality, to be a multitasker.
I liked what you said. To accept the criticism.
And talk about women leaders. In my memory,
Indira Gandhi.
Exactly.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
How dynamic! What a personality! Like, she imprinted in everyone's minds.
Yes, definitely.
Now, Linnea and Valerie may not know much about Indira Gandhi. Was Prime Minister of India for 17 years.
Oh, Valerie knows.
That woman was something.
Oh, don't think that I don't know, my dear brother. I'm sitting here and I'm enjoying this conversation so much because it goes back to what I said, cultural competency. In order for us to govern ourselves as a now global society, you don't come to this globalization without having some historical context of the globe. So I sit here, and all the folks who know me, I'm an avid, voracious reader. That's where that introvert comes in. I just have my 450 books categorized in a database, and all I'm looking at them right now. Right. So my father should have been a historian or a history professor. Okay. So I sit here and I thank all of you for bringing your cultural relevance to this conversation. That's where we lack. I would have never thought my dear sister here was Indonesian and of Dutch descent. We had this gloss over. We see people in the social locations that this white male, let's just call a thing, white male patriarchy has used moral placemaking to separate us. And so when we talk about women leaders, they're women who look like me, who look like you, that have led all across this globe. I can go back to the ancient warriors from Africa, the Black women that were leading nations. Look at our indigenous sisters. That's a matriarch system, but most people don't know that. So I sit here as a leader who's proud to be a woman, who's proud to be a woman of color, who's proud to say that it is a gift, it's an honor, it's a privilege to lead. This is not something that I take lightly. And I know that I have been entrusted to take care of not only humanity, but also the space that we occupy, which is this globe. So I stand here humbled and honored that you three, well, four of you, all of you, have shared who you are culturally. This is not about just leading from a male patriarchy lens. This is leading from our historical context and cultural relevance of who we are as leaders and how we show up. to help people look like us continue to grow and lead as well.
I just love what you said, Valerie. I think our historical perspective really makes a difference into the conversations that we bring forth. But Linnea, what can men, and though not trying to get back into gender stereotyping, but it's important at this time because of corporate culture. And the question that I want to ask Shaker next, but before the question is to you, is what can men adopt and learn to be better leaders from women?
Oh, wow. You know what? I think women tend to lead, and this is not universal. I mean, I think that there are some men who are really, you know, strong in this area as well. But I think women tend to lead from a more integrated place, right? Like we are more willing to lead from a place of that spirituality, that emotional component of ourselves, the physicality, integrate our families and our work and our community. And I think leading from a place of integration is really wholeness. Whereas when, and a tendency sometimes for men can be to lead with kind of buckets. This is my work bucket. This is my leadership bucket. This is my lay on the couch and, you know, whatever bucket. And it's like, no, how can we be integrated? And I think that women do that in such a more of an intuitive way sometimes, I think, than men do. But then we have to overcome those inhibitions, because I will say culturally, my biggest barrier to leadership as a woman was not in my community, which that is definitely, I can't even tell you, I could tell you story after story. I've been in public office for 8 years, and wow, I've been all over the state of Georgia and in my own community, and it continues to be a barrier. But the biggest barrier for me was culturally growing up, where women were supposed to be really just, you weren't supposed to have an opinion. And you were supposed to just support. You'd be the helpmeet, you know, the like the supporter. And I was always told, you're too much. I wasn't supposed to be like the learner, like you, Valerie, just the reader, the learner, the achiever. Like that was threatening to people in my culture. And it wired some things in my brain that I still have to sometimes I talk back to, and replace that with the truth about who I am as a leader. But I will say some of the most liberating leaders in my life have been men who said, I'm not going to buy into that lie. Like, you go. Like, they have called me up to places that I otherwise would not have stepped into, and my husband being one of those. But you know, so I can name so many other examples of men who just said, no, I see you. The world needs you. You better say yes. You know, and I'm like, yes, I better say yes. I'm going to say yes. Right. And overcoming some of those inhibitions and stepping into places with that kind of courage. And now being able to lead from a place of true influence. I think it's all those components together. So, yeah.
That's great. That's great.
Can I piggyback on the male influence?
Yes.
So I told you I'm the oldest of 3 girls, so meaning I have no brothers. And my father was, if I gave you just a comparison, let's say my father was Jack and I was Caroline. I lived in my own little Camelot. My father was a very engaging man around civic engagement, economic development, public safety. He was the first Black policeman in my town. He owned a company that he decided to have, a trucking company, so he could hire Black men to take care of their families. My father was civically engaged from civil disobedience as well, but my father didn't raise my sisters and I in a gender formation of what you can and cannot do. When gentlemen would ask my dad in my hometown, why are you educating those girls? My father's response was, so if she marries your knucklehead son and he does something stupid, she'll be able to take care of herself and the kids if she has to leave that fool. So I was literally raised to be a leader by watching a leader lead and telling me that I too could be a part of the beloved community. And where you live, work, learn, play, and worship, you have a responsibility to ensure that the beloved community, everybody is engaged in it. That's why I'm a womanist, because the womanist theory is all about developing the whole community. I'm not a feminist because I'm not going to just walk down the street, girls only. No.
So leading into that, I have an interesting story, right? So growing up back in India, right? My grandmother back then in the 30s was fifth grade educated, right? She had that level of education, which was a big deal. Uh, we call her the grand old matriarch of the family, right? She pulled the whole family out of the village into the cities. My grandfather did not have that vision or whatever. Pulled my oldest aunt, my dad's oldest sister, she's about 80 now, uh, out of school in fifth grade because in his opinion, that's enough education. She used to get married, and For the next 5 years, my grandmother sent my aunt to school without my grandfather's knowledge. You understand? My grandfather had no clue that his daughter is still going to school. Okay. That's how determined she was because she had that 5 grades of education, and now you have a whole family that has multiple master's degrees. I'm sitting over here, my other aunt, doctor in the Army Medical Corps, retired as Army Brigadier, etc. Right? I'm saying so that one woman with that little bit of education had the motivation, had the drive that I'm going to get all my kids out of the village, get them educated, and turn them into a whole generation change. Right?
What an inspirational story, Viplav, really.
I mean, so hats off, and she died, and I'm so lucky that I got to see her. She claimed she was 100. We think she was 98, but who cares?
It's an inspiration. She's left a legacy, and I think that's what we talked about. How does one leave a legacy of leadership? Jacob, my question is: we talked about women leadership being compassionate, spiritual, empathetic, and all that. So, do you think one of the questions that the attendees has asked is: does the corporate sector need to change their mindset and have more women leaders? Though corporate sector works on results and the efficiencies.
Yeah, so I think I'll start with the basic fact that which nobody can dispute. Women create life. Men don't create life. At the end of the day, if you create life, you have to be superhuman. You have to be super special. You have to have some kind of leadership skills to create life. And I think women across generations, across the world, they play a variety of roles. Now, especially in a place like India, like Sonia was mentioning, we have various gods, and there's literally a traffic jam of gods and goddesses in India. And at any point of time, if you come into India, there'll be some festival which will be celebrating a goddess as we talk. So that's how special India is. But I think in the corporate world, they have to understand that it's not just about the results. Results will come. You might get better results with a woman at the forefront. For example, in India, we had Indira Gandhi, who was a very popular prime minister, who managed India for almost 90 to 20 years, almost as much as our current prime minister is doing right now. So, we have had leaders like this in the past who have actually broken the myths and defied normal convention. But in the corporate world, like you said, I think it's all about empathy now. It's people have to wake up and literally smell the chai or the coffee and understand that you have to live in a world which is collaborative. You have to live in a world which is not about you don't win the silver, you lose the gold, which is also about empathy, which is also about working together, which is also about multi-skilling. And I think women are prime masters that. My wife works for a bank, and there are moments when I'm eavesdropping into her conversations which she has with her team members, and typical grapevine conversations. And you're trying to understand, you're trying to figure out, because the leader in you is trying to figure out what's going right, what's going wrong, and we have these very interesting conversations. And something you can always pick up from a woman is obviously patience. The fact that in, like, for example, in India, once again I'll say, like, in a woman, uh, education, marriage, she goes to the husband's house, and you manage different stakeholders there, your in-laws and your outlaws, and you manage different people. It's not easy at all. It is not easy at all, and they do it so easily, right? I think the women have always been the center of leadership, in a household, the sole decision making skill lies with them. Though it may look to the outside world that somebody else is taking the decision, but the focus, the nucleus is always there. It's
Definitely.
always been there. And
Definitely.
I think the world is being fooled by thinking it's never been there, but it's always been right there with the woman. The woman has the keys to the heart and to the decisions also. So yeah, so I think that's how
Definitely.
it's going to be.
Definitely. So the next question is for Sonia and Viplav, but Sonia, I'll let you respond to this question. So does it matter? So at the end of all of it, right? Removing the gender and race and all that, is it the talents and skills that matter? So what I'm asking is, does it really matter? It doesn't matter whether you're a woman or a man. It's the leadership style that you bring. What's the talent that you bring to this job? Is that who's the best fit or the best person for the job?
Absolutely. I think in today's day and age now, people, women and men are considered equal in every sector that we are talking about. And just like how Shekhar said that, women are the ones who are the prime decision makers. And of course, talent plays a very important role. And of course, we had discussed in the previous conversation that, in terms of the inherent traits that you need to have, right? You respect other people. You are like Shekhar was also talking about the fact that you need to have patience. You need to have compassion. You need to be you also need to want to learn from people. I think it's very important that whoever you are, whether you're a male or a female, you need to learn throughout your life, and you need to learn from the people who are working for you, who are following you, because only when you learn are you going to be able to evolve. I think all of us from our respective fields, like Valerie was talking about the fact that she reads a lot. We need to keep, upping our skill sets. We need to keep reading. We need to update our knowledge. We need to learn from each other. So when you are humble, when you learn, when you understand people, you resonate with them. I don't think there should be any difference between a male and a female leader.
Okay. Well, before I go into a few more questions, because I know we're coming to sort of the end of this, almost the end of the session. Viplav, the question for you was, if you had, if the question is, if you had to choose between two employees who almost scored equal, which one would you choose and why?
The one who shows the most enthusiasm for the job. It's that simple. Initiative, right? But coming back to your previous question, a perfect example is uh, as a leader, put your ego aside, right? Perfect example, Von Braun. So when there were, the competition between, the U.S. and the Soviets, the space race. So Von Braun's original idea was to have the rocket go in Earth orbit and launch the moon mission from there. There was a 22-year-old engineer who came with the idea, no, we should launch into the lunar orbit. And Von Braun just like, okay, that's a better idea. So do not let your ego get in the way.
Okay,
right?
Great example.
You always have some little guy with a better idea. So always be open to ideas.
Broad-minded.
Don't be like, hey,
Very good.
I'm the leader, I'm the boss, I made the decision.
No, it doesn't work that way nowadays. Perfect. Yes. So Valerie, one of the questions that, and I'm rushing through, sorry. One of the questions that our registrant has asked is, why is it that most times women are often let down by other women? How do we ensure that we uplift each other's first?
Coming from a household of all women, and this issue of women letting other women down is because women are attempting to mirror and imitate a white male patriarchy system. And so the tension comes in when you're not authentically being who you are. I think when women will allow themselves to be vulnerable, open, honest, candid about what they can and cannot do, let that imposter syndrome just go somewhere to the side, then women will be able to work together. That's why we established the Eco Women's Institute. We just had our first cohort of 10 dynamic young Black women in sustainability in a variety of different places. And the underlying theme that each one of them had, because I spoke with them individually after the cohort, was this was the first time that I felt safe, that I saw other women who looked like me, that I didn't feel like I was at a table, that I was only being plucked, my intellectual capital taken from me, and not being given the recognition for my participating in a decision. But now my idea is back to what my dear friend said about listening to those younger people. These women said, for the first time in my career, I felt that I was being heard, affirmed, and recognized for the skills that I bring to the table. That's where you have all that tension, because you got a woman sitting across from you who's thinking that she has to compete versus collaborate with you to get to the end goal. So I think a lot of that has to do again with the who are you authentically? How do you show up at the table? Because if you're not getting along with other women, you might want to do some internal checking to find out where the tension lies. Don't necessarily look outside of yourself if there's tension. How do you come to the table when you're dealing with other women? So I think it's a personal ownership that one has to take.
Very well said. So in 2 minutes, I do want to go over the closing comments. But before that, I have a question for Shekhar. Shekhar, can you tell us the story about the turning point in your life where I read about it in your in-laws' place, and then how you used that embarrassing or the moment that you describe as a stepping stone to improve yourself?
So I think I was watching a game. I was watching an India-Pakistan game.
Tell us in detail.
Yeah.
Like,
I was
this
watching
is
a game.
storytelling, man. Linnea, just listen to this. Yes.
So I was watching a game of cricket. I had alluded to this earlier about MS Dhoni and cricket, which is almost like baseball in USA, but with more emotions, like 10x emotions into baseball. I think Sunay will agree. So I was watching this particular game, which we were playing with our arch rivals, which is Pakistan, and we have a checkered history with Pakistan. We have fought a couple of wars with them, and I was watching this game, and I was sitting on a plastic chair, and in the heat of excitement, the chair broke and fell, and I was overweight. And it hit me hard that there was a glass case right behind me, and so I think the way it works is when you're overweight or when you're dealing with body issues, it doesn't hit you till it hits you, till it becomes personal. Then till the whole world tells you anything, you really don't care. But when it hits you hard, that's when you start making a difference to your life. That moment I remember very well. And then I'd gone to my in-laws' house in Chennai, and it became like a joke basically. I use this as the opening set in all my comedy routines where I tell people that I'd gone to my in-laws' house in Chennai, and I was sitting on a commode and the commode broke, and they said we need a golden commode for Shaker because Shaker has a golden retriever. So that became like a joke and a good routine to start off with, which my in-laws are obviously not happy about. It's a masala you add, it's the spice you add as a storyteller to make the conversation interesting. But that was an important touch point for me, because from there I never looked back, because it was a personal story. And from there I started wanting to lose weight. So like everybody does, on the 1st of Jan you start having these new year resolutions where you pay X amount of money to the gym and the trainer and say, you know what, make me thin. But that's just an illusion. It never really happens like that, because on the 5th day you stop going to the gym. So I thought, let me work out a plan where I started walking 5 kilometers every day, 10 kilometers every day. Then I started running 15 kilometers every day. I started walking with my dog. My dog said, "Boss, I don't need a six pack. Why are you making me walk so much? It doesn't make any sense. Why don't you do this on your own?" Then I started controlling what I eat. So in terms of what I intake, and I'm a teetotalist. I don't drink, I don't smoke, so there's no problem there as such. But in terms of what goes in, what time do you sleep, and I also make sure I do a plank, for example, every half an hour, which is very crazy. But then madness is what drives a lot of people, including me. And I think I'm slightly mad there and quirky there. I'm also a chef's nightmare, because wherever I go to a hotel or restaurant, I'm very finicky, very, very, very particular about what I eat and what goes into my body. That has helped me in good state. But I think the main point around all this is a sense of discipline. And I have mentioned this in quite a few places. Being stubborn can be a strong point. I was very stubborn about what I wanted to do with my life, and I felt it's like a moving target where I believe that if I want to lose 50 kilos in a year, I can do it on my own, and I can be my own competition, and I can do this by just being stubborn about it, being realistic about it, and just making sure that I have that that resilience to drive myself day in and day out, because it can be a lonely process. You're on it every day, and people say you need to have these cheat days where you eat 6 days and 7 day you can go out and eat a pizza or something like that. But for me, I think all 7 days it works the same. I don't need a cheat day.
Shaker, you actually lost 50 kilos?
Yeah.
Wow.
So Valerie, and that's 110 pounds.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I have a photograph of my before and after pic as soon as I wake up in the morning. So it's like right there on the cupboard. So I can't miss it. So as soon as I wake up,
how much did you weigh at your peak?
I was weighing around 130 kilos, and then around 50 kilos. And it's an ongoing process, because once you lose weight, even if you get up, yeah.
So, Shekhar, this is a great example of being self-inspired. You always don't need someone else to inspire you, right?
Oh, yes.
You can wake up yourself, your own soul inside, the purpose of you being here, and are you living your dream, or how do you get to there where you can be yourself authentic? So this is a great example that will always remain about you, that how you inspired yourself to make that change. But Viplav, I want to go to you about this story that you mentioned recently, is about when you were in mid school, how you were at the bottom rank, the last person in this class, and who inspired you to, get to the top. If you can just quickly, briefly touch upon that, then I want us to go into closing comments.
Life story. At some point in time, you're like, there's always this one good teacher, right? And that's so important, right? And that, that 13, 14-year-old rebellious, and you have this one awesome teacher who gets you interested, right? So I was pretty much bottom ranker in my class. And then I had this awesome math teacher and a science teacher, going from 8th grade. So 8th grade, I was bottom ranker. 9th grade, I was the top in my class. 10th grade, I was the top in the school. Not just the school, the whole state of Rajasthan. Okay? Just because of a couple of good teachers. Right? It's sort of like, it comes back to positive reinforcement. Right? Bad teachers, and this is old school, right? Corporal punishment. I had a bad teacher in 7th grade. First thing he would do, come to class. First up, did you do your homework? I had the stick. And I stick my hand out. Smack me. Right? Versus the next grade, had this teacher who saw the potential, and positive reinforcement. That's it.
Definitely.
And I have a dog. I raised him that way. Positive reinforcement. He does something wrong, never say nothing. And now he knows when he's. It's just like psychology 101.
Yes. And the reason I wanted to bring that up is that you have sometimes these mentors in life, or the inspirators who inspire for you and see your talent and want to, light that candle within you to say that, hey, you can be so much more.
Direction. No pressure. Just there's 2 ways to go. The wrong way or the right way. Just nudge him in the right direction, and the rest will follow.
Definitely. So sounds great. So, oh my gosh, it has been so wonderful the past 2 hours spending with y'all, learning so much and learning so much more from even your personal lives, your professional lives, your corporate lives, your public lives. So much came into being, even the image. So Sonia, I know we didn't touch upon much about imaging, but I think most of what we discussed is sort of the things that you do go and talk to your clients or team members as well. But I would like for us to go into closing comments. And Linnea, I would like to start with you, a few second closing comments. And also if you can add to those closing comments, what is it that you would tell a person who is inspiring or aspiring to be a leader?
Oh, wow. Just a couple things that are front of mind. I think, kind of touching on that issue that we were talking about recently about with women in leadership. And I think, we were talking about how women, there should be an equality. And I think some people, they would recognize that. I do think we have a long way to go to get to equity and to get to inclusion. And not just with women, but with that kind of cultural competency that Valerie was touching on as well, because it's just not enough to have diversity and to have people at the table. It's how do we get those people to to experience exactly what those young women that were in Valerie's cohort are experiencing, which is that my contribution is valued and it matters. And really, that's what we're trying to do. I think that's what every single human being wants, is to wake up and to know that the contributions that I make in this day are adding value to something greater than me, and that they are appreciated and recognized. And I think we all want that, right? And the reality is that I think as leaders, we need to fight for unlocking that in people, because everybody wants that. We just don't all know how to get it, or we don't all have an equitable opportunity to be able to have that realized, that human need realized. And so as leaders, I would say, let's go about doing that work of what I call it liberation, because it's like empowering, it's that lending of strength, and then it's that providing opportunities for people to really have their value appreciated, and to be able to, that's a really free, liberating kind of life. And I think that's the thing I would tell leaders, is be liberators. And part of that, I love what Viplav said about noticing. What is celebrated is replicated. Yes. So like, let's just not call out when we don't like something, but when we see people embodying those things that we've been talking about this whole time, which is integrity and authenticity and kindness and empathy, and like, call it out, and then we do it more, right? Like, call that up and we do it more. And so let's be great celebrators of others as well. And that's inspiring.
Very nice. Thank you so much, Linnea, for joining us today. Sonia?
I think I loved what Linnea just said, help people celebrate themselves. And I think that is so important. The fact that, as an image consultant, when I'm working with other people, I work with people who are CEOs, CFOs, MDs, and there are people who are also homemakers. It's about making them realize their true potential. Their strengths, and of course the not so developed strengths, and honing them to perfection, right? So we all as leaders need to understand that people need to they need to discover themselves. You're basically helping them rediscover themselves. You're helping them, like Shekhar said, become the best version of themselves. And I think that is the most important thing that a leader must do. And as leaders, I believe that, of course, we all need to have our own mentors, because we'll adopt their strategies. So we are always constantly learning. So from time to time, we need to have mentors so that we can mentor other people in the right manner. So
very nice. Thank you, Sonia.
Thank you.
You, Sonia, for your time. And I know it's almost like 10:30 or 10, heading to 10 p.m. Yeah, so we are almost done. So next, Viplav, Valerie, and Shekhar, please. Viplav, closing comments and any thoughts about for future leaders.
That won't close. It won't take that much time. The only one thing I have: listen, pay attention.
Okay,
that's it.
Very nice.
You want to be a leader? Listen to the people you want to lead. Okay, it's that simple.
Very nice. Listening skills are very, very, very important for a prospective leader.
When I say listen, it's like to understand their needs.
Yes.
Right.
Definitely. Awesome. Great. So Valerie.
So I heard liberation. I heard empowerment. I've heard listen. I think, and I know my dear brother Shekhar is going to bring it home and tie it all together. But for me, being in leadership allows me the opportunity to liberate those from their own thoughts of what they can or cannot achieve, and to help them to be the best person that they can through the resources, the relationships, and the opportunities that I have, because through opening doors for others, that's what a good leader does. And if you can let me know where it is that you want to go, I can guarantee you, if you trust me and give me an opportunity to participate in the growth that you see for yourself, as a leader, it is incumbent upon me to help you to get there. So call me Harriet Tubman, the liberator that I am. Right. And I think that's the role that we should play.
So coming back to my point when I said listen, right? So when Gandhi spent 21 years in South Africa, there's a little experiment of leading, and then came back to India, spent 10 years, Sonia and Shekhar, just traveling the country, right? to wrap his head around what's going on. What do my people need? Then came up with the whole, nonviolence movement, right? So the point is, what am I trying to lead to begin with, right? Because at the end of the day, it's a need of people that I'm trying to fulfill.
Very well said.
Otherwise, there's no point. What am I going to be, Hitler or Donald Trump? Right, lead for my own sake. Like Donald Trump, like a chimpanzee thumping my chest.
I always say, seek to understand before seeking to be understood.
Yeah. Yes.
Absolutely.
Right.
Very well said.
Absolutely.
Shaker, closing comments and any thoughts on aspiring leaders?
So I want to end with a quote by this wonderful lady, Mary Angelou. And, she said this: I've learned that people will forget what you said, people will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel. I think that, in essence, is what leadership is about. Leadership is about how you make people feel. And, this is the best example of it. You brought all of us together from different cultures, from different pockets of life, and you allowed us to speak. That, I think, exemplifies leadership. And like I had mentioned earlier, I think leadership is going to be about developing a culture of openness, a culture of honesty, a culture of celebrating everybody's strength, weaknesses, everybody's happiness, everybody's sadness, everybody's failures. Leadership is all about being relevant. It's also about being adaptable in today's day and age, because we are competing with technology, and we should not allow technology to control us. That's where storytelling comes into the picture, and those connections happen. Leadership is also about being kind. Leadership is also about having an element of gratitude. I think we're all very lucky, very fortunate that we are on this forum where we can talk to you or you can listen in to us. There are so many others who have not been so fortunate, unlike us. And I think that element of gratitude is very important, because at the end of the day, we are just a tiny speck in this universe. We don't really matter. So I think that spiritual quotient has to be there. Like we have got emotional quotient, you have your intelligence quotient. You need to have a spiritual quotient as a leader also, because a spiritual quotient allows you to be humble, allows you to be kind, allows you to be emotionally aware that the whole world can revolve without you too.
Definitely.
I think people have this mistaken notion that life revolves around them, which is not the case at all. We are just a tiny speck in this universe, but we can make an impact if we want to make an impact as leaders.
What powerful statement. Oh my gosh, thank you, Shaker. I don't know what else to say after you said all these. But we are not done yet, right? Because I've said I'm going to get Linnea and Valerie together for coffee or chai in the next few months. I'm going to get Valerie and Viplav together in a roller coaster in Six Flags in Georgia. And I'm going to get Sonia and Shaker together the next year I'm in India in Bangalore.
Yes,
And we're going to hang out and follow Sonia's prescription for our clothing, or because she's the image consultant, Shaker. So we're going to buy all the clothes that she asked us to do.
So, yeah. I think both of us got the memo, because both of us are wearing red.
So that's what I'm going to do. But viewers and audience, thank you so much for spending the last 2 hours this morning, actually the Saturday morning with us. I've learned so much, and I hope you have too. The recorded version will be out, and Chai and Just Chat continues every month. So keep tuned in our website for the next session in November and then December and so on. So definitely thank you again. Thank you all you panelists. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you for your humbleness. Thank you for your humility, your leadership. Oh wait.
Just 1 second. So when you guys hang up, I was watching this documentary on Julian Assange, WikiLeaks. And what drove Bradley Manning to leak all the, there's one little, scene in there, pale blue dot. Google it.
Pale blue dot.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right. It's an image that was taken in 1990 by Voyager from 3.7 billion miles away of Earth. Right. And Carl Sagan made a comment, right? This is where all the, people like us and the dictators and what have you, right? All the quote unquote curse words, right? The humility of the vastness of the universe and how insignificant we are.
You're in the larger scheme of things.
Right? Yeah, exactly.
Awesome. So great point. We got a homework, so I'm going to go Google it up soon.
Yeah,
okay, sounds good. Thank you again for your humility,
Right.
humbleness, and your time that you spent with us. Yeah. Have a
you
good
so
night, Sonia and Shekhar. Have a
Thank
rest of the good weekend with Linnea, Valerie, and Viplav.
Wonderful day.
Thank you,
Take
Nazeera.
care.
Have a great day, everyone, and a
Bye-bye.
good evening.